Oh, hey, fellow young person. You caught me getting an avocado for my toast. Speaking of obviously being a millennial, let's talk about young writer Donny Cates.
Comic tropes. Comic tropes.
Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. I was recently reading some comic books that my local comic book store had clued me in on, told me that they were selling well and connecting with current readers. And I want to stay abreast of what's important. Don't worry, I did curbside pickup, so your boy is safe. Anyway, the books I was reading included God Country, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Venom. You may notice that all of these titles were written by a relatively new writer, Donny Cates. Marvel Comics has recently put a lot of faith in this guy, and I was curious when I was reading it why something was nagging me in the back of my head about what felt different. I was enjoying these bombastic plots, but something felt different. After enjoying the comics, I read them again more critically, and I noticed several things. There was the use of a lot of newer Marvel characters, specifically from their late Ultimate Universe, and a bunch of father-son themes. Without knowing anything about Mr. Cates, I wondered if he was younger than me. And yes, he is from the millennial generation. And while I wouldn't want to make one writer representative of an entire generation of people, it did help me understand his writing a little bit better. I realized that he wasn't using the same cultural touchstones that I was used to reading about. And I liked that change of pace. So today, what I want to do is take a look at, briefly, the history of Donny Cates and how he got into the business, but specifically, let's take a deep dive at the themes that Donny Cates likes to analyze with his writing so that we can try to understand an up-and-coming writer from the current generation. Before we continue, please consider hitting like and subscribe. I've got more information in the description below, but without any further ado, let's get into it. Donny Cates was born in the fall of 1984 in Texas, and he had an early interest in comics, growing up with them during the 90s investor explosion. He went on to work in retail at comic shops, but he wanted to do more. He attended the prestigious Savannah College of Art and Design and studied alongside fellow future professionals like artists Tradd Moore and Jeff Shaw. Cates had intended to study sequential art, but after comparing himself to Moore and Shaw, he opted to transition into learning writing. After a couple years of college, he got an internship at Marvel Comics in 2010. Cates has a great story about his time interning at Marvel and how, at the end of his internship, he had the opportunity to work at Marvel. And this was going to be an entry-level job in the mailroom. So we talked to an editor there, Mark Paniccia, and the editor gave him this advice. He says, "What do you really want to do here, ultimately?" And Cates says, "I want to be a writer." So the editor says, "Don't take this job. If you take it, you're either going to be so good at this job that you'll never get an opportunity to pitch writing, or you're going to be terrible at the job and you're going to get let go. It's just not going to work out if that's the career path you want to go in." So even though he sort of had his foot in the door at Marvel, he made the very difficult decision to walk away from it. Instead, Cates went home to Austin, Texas, and began making self-published comics. And a chance meeting with the head of sales and marketing of Dark Horse Comics at the C2E2 convention led to him getting that story published in Dark Horse Presents. From there, Cates did several miniseries with Dark Horse, including Buzzkill and Paybacks. Buzzkill is emblematic of the things Cates likes to write about. Big cosmic ideas grounded in gritty real-world issues. In this case, it's about Ruben, who gets his superpowers by drinking and doing drugs. The artwork is a team-up with his fellow classmate Jeff Shaw, who he'd continue to collaborate with. If you read interviews with Donny Cates, he has admitted that he was actually dealing with drug addiction at the time that he was writing Buzzkill. And without even knowing it, he found this out looking back. He had self-inserted himself to a large degree in those stories. Buzzkill is funny and exciting and entertaining, but it is also quite dark. I mean, it's dealing with addiction issues wrapped in a superhero metaphor. That said, I do think that he would go on to focus those addiction themes better in his future work. Cates' proven work with Dark Horse got him to a position where he had his pitch to Image accepted. This was God Country, and it was what got him noticed by Marvel. God Country, in brief, follows Emmett, an older man with Alzheimer's, and how his dementia and violent outbursts are beginning to drive a wedge between his son Roy and his family. It ties together all the themes Cates is known for, a massive cosmic story set against a rustic rural background in Texas. Because when a cosmic tornado appears, Emmett emerges from his home's wreckage with the mythical sword Valofax, which grants him not just his memories, but nearly omnipotent power. But it also brings the wrath of Adam, a god who created the sword and sends his sons to retrieve it. I won't spoil the twists and turns of God Country, suffice it to say it's definitely what got Cates noticed by Marvel. The book offers us some insightful and believable family drama contrasting different types of fathers, and it offers all of that alongside some big, bombastic, over-the-top action. Having those tools in your belt to balance drama with big action, that's the kind of stuff that a superhero publisher like Marvel is looking for, and ultimately God Country is what brought Donny Cates back to Marvel. In 2017, Marvel's editor-in-chief, Axel Alonso, read God Country, and he offered Cates some writing work. Cates had success on titles like Doctor Strange and Inhumans, and was actually signed to an exclusive before his books even started hitting the shelves. There's a good chance Marvel made this decision after seeing writer Tom King make a name for himself the previous year on Vision, and then losing him to DC, who quickly signed King to an exclusive. And honestly, Cates is a good fit for Marvel. He grew up as a passionate fan of their characters and was ultimately given a new ongoing Venom book. Not only did Cates grow up in the 90s when Venom debuted and was hugely successful, he was such a fan that he made clay sculptures of the characters when he couldn't afford to buy toys. Cates shook things up at Marvel by making Loki become the Sorcerer Supreme and having Inhuman King Black Bolt go on a John Wick-esque revenge story. The one weird recurring element in both of these books is how he killed a dog to elicit sympathy from the readers. But killing Lockjaw at least made Inhumans a different story than constantly dealing with their Terrigen mists transforming someone, which was getting old. Instead, he had Black Bolt get his throat slit, so his superpowered voice was taken almost completely away and made him the underdog. Cates got noticed in a big way by readers when he was placed on the ongoing Thanos monthly comic. He went big, sending Thanos into a future where he had successfully killed the universe, and he still can't get Death to love him. Showing a villainous character at 2 points in his life proved a great contrast. It also gave us the character Cosmic Ghost Rider. That's the future King Thanos' right-hand man. The character was so bonkers, he got a spin-off series. It's another good example of what Cates does well. First, he took popular 90s characters Punisher and Ghost Rider and he merged them. In his story, Frank Castle becomes Ghost Rider, but Thanos defeats Earth's heroes. Eventually, Galactus comes to eat Earth, and Frank convinces him to make him his herald, gaining cosmic powers on top of his demonic powers. But he still can't defeat Thanos and is corrupted by him. In the spin-off title, he goes back in time to kill baby Thanos, but he can't do it, and instead decides to raise him to be moral. That idea is doomed, but the story played like a tongue-in-cheek version of Lone Wolf and Cub, with Frank wandering the galaxy with baby Thanos, as Cable brings armies of superheroes from the future to kill them both. That said, Marvel made a weird choice at this point in time. You see, Thanos' creator, Jim Starlin, was launching a trilogy of graphic novels about his character. He had just released the first, The Infinity Siblings, and was working on the next one. By his account, he had scripted 200 pages and artist Alan Davis had illustrated 100, with approval by editor Tom Brevoort, when he learned that the ongoing monthly comic was about to do a similar plot to his next book. Brevoort had already approved the story, and Starlin was upset that the monthly comic would have its story released first, so he vowed not to work for Marvel anymore once his trade was published. I think this is 100% the fault of the editor and not any of the creative people involved. It brings up an interesting question. Does a company like Marvel have any obligation to continue giving work to their creators who have given them big, epic, memorable characters or storylines, or should they place their faith in the new generation of talent who's up and coming? I don't know that there's a perfect solution. Maybe there could have been a compromise here, or maybe somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. It's a nightmare no matter how you look at it. Donny Cates loves 90s comics. It's what he grew up on. So just imagine combining his ideas of father-son relationships, 90s characters, and early 2000s Marvel Comics history into a run on Venom. It's a hit. The previous volume of Venom launched in March of 2011 with the Agent Venom story by writer Rick Remender and artist Tony Moore. It debuted around 54,000 copies and settled around 30,000 for most of its run. Cates' version of Venom debuted around 226,000 copies in May of 2018, probably helped by the recent film, and is currently selling just under 50,000 copies a month 2 years into its run. It was recently bolstered by the popular event Absolute Carnage. It's essentially a sequel to the 90s event Maximum Carnage, where Spider-Man and Venom have to team up, along with other superheroes, against the insane and insanely powerful villain Carnage. Cates has added a lot to Eddie Brock, the original host of the Venom symbiote, and who was originally a Spider-Man villain, but whose popularity led to him getting his own spin-off series over the years where he acted as a vigilante. But while Venom had an origin, he never had his motivation spelled out as a hero. For instance, Batman's family is murdered in front of him, and he vows to stop that from happening to anyone else. Spider-Man ignores a burglar who later kills his uncle, teaching him the importance of responsibility. Venom has said he wants to protect the innocent, but why? Well, Cates finally answers that by tying in more family drama. We learn a young and drunk Eddie Brock killed a kid and was ready to plead guilty, but his father violently forced him to plead innocent, and he got off. That guilt has hung with Eddie for his entire life and has made him want to try to get redemption. Other recurring themes include family bonds and addiction. Along the way of this story, Eddie learns he has a son. The incredibly fragile but powerful codependent relationship that Eddie shares with his alien symbiote is brought to the front of each issue. And on top of all that, Cates retcons the origin of the symbiote aliens that make Venom and Carnage who they are, revealing they were created near the beginning of time by a dark god named Null, who was content to live in the void until the Celestials interrupted his sleep. Null created his symbiotes to destroy all life, but when they were exposed to light, they learned that they valued life, and they turned on their creator, imprisoning him within a jail of their bodies, big enough to be thought of as a planet. But Null is waking up. Null's origin ties into the origins of Nowhere from Guardians of the Galaxy and the God Butcher's sword from Thor. It explains why symbiotes have a weakness to fire and sound because they were created in a forge. Venom is a return to the dark and edgy stories of 90s comics, but with significantly more emotional resonance backing it up. On top of this, the Venom run prominently uses characters from Marvel's late parallel universe of titles, their Ultimate Comics. Donny Cates has said that he was a big fan of the Ultimate line. Miles Morales and Maker, the evil version of Reed Richards, are both recurring and important characters in the book. I noticed that Cates wrote about a variety of father-child relationships, and I did some research. When I saw that there were so many father-son relationships in Cates' work, from God Country to Venom, I started thinking, is this a millennial thing? Well, I did some research and it turns out, probably. Millennials are said to actually be closer to their family, their nuclear family, than previous generations. And they have a little less connection to things like their work or friends. It's not to say they don't have those connections, it's just saying that it's less important than, say, Generation X. So when you take a look at that, all of a sudden you start realizing that he's using the touchstones that are important to his generation. There isn't workplace soap opera drama like there used to be in Spider-Man. Instead, it's more of a focus on Eddie's family. It's a focus on using 90s characters that he grew up with. In an interview with SCAD, Cates said that when it comes time to write, he immerses himself in research, noting that he's attended AA meetings and spoken with someone from the military as an advisor, as well as reading books about settings or listening to musical playlists to get into the right frame of mind. He credits his teacher Mark Neese with teaching him how to format and pace his stories properly. He currently writes up to 9 titles a month, putting out a script once every 3 days. If that sounds intense, keep in mind, Cates already told us that he was an addict in the past. And now, instead of that being just a disease, keep in mind it's still a personality trait and he's using those impulses towards something productive. He's writing a lot. I just hope that Marvel acknowledges that he'll probably keep taking work if they throw it at him and that they don't overwork him and burn him out. If you're curious where to start with this guy, if you're curious like, hey, this sounds like something that might be interesting to me, I strongly recommend God Country. That's going to be a good barometer of whether you like his style of writing. It's just 6 issues, so I think that that's a great entry point. You don't have to know any sort of previous history or anything to know if you like his writing style. I'm quite impressed by his work ethic. I'm also very interested in what elements are important to him, like family relationships and addiction. I've got some more opinions, but first let's take a quick look at what fan art came in this week. Derek Logan sent in art referring to the time Stiltman beat Spider-Man. Dries Van Hoolant illustrated me sharing a pizza with Spidey. Ren Ante sent in this cartoon from the Philippines based on the recent Bernard Krigstein episode. Max Royer drew me farting my way through the sky like superhero Dynamite Thor. Matthias Soto Lopez created this accurate-to-life version of me as a barbarian. You can see more of his work on Instagram. Deo Olafade sent in artwork where I'm wearing a suit designed by Rob Liefeld. Dylan Thornton illustrated me as a classic superhero. He includes his Instagram. Joanne Fox from the UK sent in this piece based on my show's opening. Wings of Wrath from Romania drew me into his comic that he's making, which retells the Joan of Arc story in an alternate World War I. You can see more of his work on DeviantArt. Rob says his father introduced him to my show, and he created me as Dynamite Thor. J. Andrew World sent in artwork of me hanging out naked with a Ninja Turtle. He includes a Twitter and Instagram link. Kevin Michaels illustrated me as the Yellow Kid, meeting other classic comic strip characters. Hugo Nicolas Gomez Zarco from Argentina sent in me as classic Argentinian comic character the Eternaut. He also included his Instagram. Pedro Pinchard Batista do Amaral imagines me as an actor in one of the Ninja Turtles movies. Finally, Martin Segovia sent in artwork of me in the world of the Argentinian comic The Eternaut. Martin includes his website. Folks, I always appreciate getting fan art. It's a real pleasure to be able to share that. So if you would like to have some fan art shared, as long as it has something to do with comic tropes, just send it on in to comictropes@gmail.com and I'll be sure to share it. On top of that, I will then draw a prize, a gachapon that I picked up in Japan. That comes out of the gachapon machine that was donated by Lunarshine Store. All right, so we had 15 entrants. Let's roll the ball hopper. One more time. Woo! So much fun. And let's see who won. Okay, it is number 1. I don't know if we've ever had number 1. Maybe. But congratulations, that was this artwork. And let's see what you won. All right. Gotcha. Well, it's blue. Oh, it says Land Cruiser. So this is like a miniature reproduction of a Land Cruiser. Very, very highly detailed. So that's fun. I will get your contact information, entrant number 1, and send that your way. Now, let's ramble. So is Donny Cates a perfect writer? Well, no. He's still growing and evolving. But I think he's doing some very interesting stuff. I think that God Country is something special. That's a really good early book, and he is only focusing the themes and ideas that he wants to explore more closely and intimately and in more exciting ways as he continues. Venom is much better than I expected it to be. Much better. I loved the Venom run by Rick Remender and Tony Moore. So I was resistant, I should say, to a new version of Venom. Or really kind of the old version of Venom, going back to Eddie Brock. But it's great. It's really good. He finally has a reason for being a hero, for being Venom. It explores his relationship with the symbiote in deep and meaningful ways. It's not just goofy action where he's going into a computer to fight Carnage on the monitors of Times Square. Sorry, that was not my favorite version of Venom. He's got tropes, personal tropes, that I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from. Like, to kill 2 dogs right in a row in superhero comics strikes me as not a great idea. Do it once or do it not at all, but don't do it twice in a row. But whatever. He's still very new to the industry, and he's got a long way to go. I do think he's a very good fit for Marvel, and it's good to bring in new, fresh talent on characters that have been around for over 60 years at this point. Spider-Man's been around for over 60 years. That can potentially be a lot of baggage. But if you get somebody that's a new, younger writer, they're going to more just focus on some of the stuff in the more recent past, and they've got the gist of the character. I can tell that Spider-Man is a very important character to Donny Cates. He writes him very well. Like, he makes him funny, but heartfelt. He's good. He should honestly write Spider-Man soon. Venom is good, but he should probably write Spider-Man soon. I would like that. I'm curious, who else is an up-and-coming writer? Not even just in mainstream comics. Like, tell me about some indie creators. I'm very curious to think, like, who else is from the millennial generation that's entered comics? I'd be curious to see what they're exploring and to see if there's any commonalities or if they're all individuals. Of course they're going to be individuals. Some of the stuff that Cates has written, like Cosmic Ghost Rider, it's not as memorable. It's kind of fluff. But some of the stuff he's written is great. I didn't really get into Silver Surfer or Redneck. Both are really good books. Silver Surfer shows that Cates does cosmic stories very well. He really does. He gets that universe and finds a way to ground it and make it real. And Redneck is a vampire story about a vampire family. That idea, Redneck, it carries so many connotations. Brilliant title. Can't believe nobody thought of that one before. So I recommend at least God Country and Venom. And I guess I would also put Redneck in there as sort of my top 3 recommendations for where to start to see if you like his work. I do. And I like that he's working with some up-and-coming artists as well, like Jeff Shaw. Jeff Shaw reminds me of guys that don't always get their due, but have great fundamentals as well as a personal aesthetic. I'm thinking of guys that have worked on like Hellboy type stuff before, like Guy Davis or Duncan Fegredo. Great artist. He's definitely going to be going places too. That's a lot of thoughts on Donny Cates. I was interested to sort of discover him and so much of his work in, honestly, a relatively short period of time. Like in about 3 weeks is the time period when I read all of this stuff. Very new to me still. Curious to hear some of your opinions on him, as well as hear about other upcoming talent. So, that's all I got to say for this week. Sorry I didn't have an episode last week. I was actually really, really sick. Nothing related to the pandemic. My stomach was just in knots and I was really scared, but I'm feeling good now. I'm back. Definitely please consider hitting subscribe. I'm trying to convert like some of my viewers over to Patreon. If you can even do just $1 a month, that would be huge to me because I've got a lot of subscribers. A very small amount of them, if they were just doing $1, I would be in great shape. I could probably be very comfortable doing this full time. which I am now since work is on furlough, but that's sort of its own separate issue. Hopefully right now I get to go back to work someday. I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe, taking care of each other. Just make smart decisions. Know that I sincerely appreciate and care about all of you. I really do. It's amazing to have an audience like this. But that's enough rambling from me. I've got some huge ideas for upcoming episodes, so I think that I'm at least pretty excited about it, and I hope you will be too. Thank you for joining me. Until I see you next time, keep reading comics.